of journalism at Rowan University. On and off, I have covered issues related to the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. Much of that deals with political science and public policy, which is why Professor Barch asked me if I would speak briefly on that and maybe give a preface to the film you're about to see. What happened is this was a collision of public policy that was meant to serve a public good. Now, we make policies that we think are going to serve a public good. Some examples are mortgages. Mortgages, we feel, at least many people feel, serve a public good if they're widely available and more people can buy homes. Home ownership, it's thought, increases the quality of the neighborhood, makes people harder working. We give tax deductions for mortgage interest. We give very favorable tax status to people who have houses. So we're setting policy that provides a benefit for owning a mortgage. Now, the government does this in many different ways. For example, we have taxes against things that we don't want to have. We have taxes that put a very heavy tax on cigarettes and liquor. A pack of cigarettes may cost $6 or $7, but almost half of that, and sometimes a little bit more depending on the state, is in taxes. It's called a sin tax. The idea is that by taxing it heavily, you discourage people from smoking, and also you collect a lot of money for the government. Liquor is about the same way. About half of a bottle of liquor is basically the taxes. So by taxing something, we have a public policy that makes it less likely people will use it, or we think, and if they do, we benefit from it. Or by giving tax breaks to certain other activities we think are good, such as mortgages, we provide a public benefit there also. Now, there's another type of public policy that's intertwined in this, and there were three legs of this stool that all collapsed at once. And that's the idea of a corporation. A corporation doesn't exist in nature. It's a legal setup that allows unlimited investment, but with no liability other than losing your initial investment. What that means is if I start a cat food company, and if you were just a partner with me in the cat food company, and we both owned it, if I produced a batch of poisonous cat food and all the cats in the world went paws up, you would be on the hook for the lawsuits the same as I. However, if I have a corporation, that means I can issue stock, which is partial ownership in the company, but at the same time, all you do is have a partial ownership but no liability. My end of the deal is I'm actually borrowing your money and I pay it back in terms of dividends. I'm supposed to make a handsome profit every quarter and your stock will increase in value. Here's what happened in 2008. There had been several waves of deregulation under various presidents, and the Affordable Housing Act was an act that lowered the standards for people to buy homes, again, for this public good. Why was this happening? Well, the reason was that everyone wanted a home. Houses were selling like hotcakes. Many people were investing in houses, just buying them, holding on to them for maybe 3 or 4 months, and the price would go up just because housing market was increasing, increasing, increasing. People thought there would never be an end to it. Literally, many people did think there would never be an end to it, including some of the major investment banks in the world. They didn't even have a model for if the housing went down. But what the investment banks did was they decided they would issue stock based on mortgages. It's not a new idea selling a loan, but the idea of packaging mortgages and issuing them as a stock, that was a new idea. And that was wildly popular. Now, why would the banks issue loans to people who couldn't afford them? Because the bank couldn't lose, or they thought they couldn't lose, because what would happen is if the person who bought the house defaulted, the bank would reclaim the house, and the bank fully expected the house would gain 30-40% in value in the time that the person held it. But like all bubbles, it came to an end. The housing market crashed. Then all these stocks that were sold based on these mortgage-backed securities turned into what they were calling toxic assets. In other words, they just weren't worth anything. You couldn't sell them. No one wanted them because they were based on something that wasn't solid. Then there was something even worse happened. There's an insurance company called AIG. AIG is the largest insurance company in the world. They had backed these mortgage-backed securities. They actually issued insurance to the banks that issued stock for the mortgage-backed securities. Now, AIG actually holds many pensions, it holds life insurance. When all these stock brokerage houses, the places that issue stocks, began to see that their investments were failing very badly, it became apparent that many of these mortgage companies were going to fail. And in turn, many of the investment banks were going to fail. When that happened, AIG would be on the hook for billions, maybe even $1 trillion. AIG didn't have that money. Now, was it bad faith? Well, not exactly, because our whole system of economics in the United States is based on credit. You are lending the bank your money when you invest it. The bank doesn't have your money, they lend it out. If every customer of a bank went to the bank wouldn't have enough money to pay it back. But we have it on faith that the bank would eventually be able to get it, recall some of their investments. Well, when it looked like AIG was going to crash and no one would be able to pay back all these investments, and it was a global problem because some of these stocks were held by school boards in Norway. That's how global it was. The government felt compelled to step in. And this was another idea of public policy as a social good. Should the government provide money to bail out the failing mortgage banks and also to bail out AIG? As you'll see in the upcoming film, the government initially resisted that. Henry Paulson, who was Secretary of the Treasury, said, we don't want to do that because that would provide a moral hazard. In other words, encouraging bad behavior. So he let one bank fail. He thought it was working, but then it didn't. The credit markets froze up. Businesses that have to have credit, they have to have credit for the day-to-day operations, they couldn't get it. And that's when the corporations of all stripe came to the government and said, you have to bail us out because our system is too big to fail. And that is the preface for the film that you're about to see tonight. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show.